Welcome back to Off Ball Takes. This is your host, Yarby and this is my co-host.
Mr. Wells.
We appreciate all the support on our recent content, and before we do get started, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and follow us on Instagram and TikTok at the OBT Podcast for more content and updates.
Yes, we're back. We're here. We're at it again with another episode of Off Ball Takes. Coming off of the NBA Finals, right, where the team that we picked to win the series won the series because we're never wrong, which is not true at all. But either way, the New York Knicks beat the San Antonio Spurs in 5 games. Brunson with the Finals MVP. Awesome, awesome performance. We did talk about that in the live stream. So if you wanted to hear more about that, you can check that out. But now we're getting into the off season, right? So we kind of thought we would sort of look back and kind of take a look at all these teams over the course of the season, and maybe give them a little grade, give them a little shout out. We've done this before. The last few times they were a little bit long, so we're gonna try to make it a little bit shorter, a little bit more manageable this time around. But as we usually do, we start off with the teams in the finals. So both of them, just spoiler alert, Knicks and Spurs, give them both an A+. The team that wins the championship, we've pretty much always given them an A+, because that is one of the goals of many of the teams in the league. And for the Knicks, you win the championship. This is a team, obviously, where, as everybody's talked about, first title in 53 years, right? Led by Brunson, took less money, very talented team put together. But you can't ignore the fact that he put up some great performances, including the closeout game 5, 45 points in a closeout game 5, legendary stuff. And obviously that's the goal that they went into the last couple of seasons with, right? Like they signed Brunson in 22, then eventually they trade for Josh Hart the next year, then they trade for OG, then they trade for Bridges and Towns in the same summer, right? I think Towns was later. That was like leading up to the regular season, but like they had to build this team over several years. So a great job putting that team together. Great work by everybody involved, including the players, of course, the coach Mike Brown. So easy A+ there. And then for the Spurs, it feels like a lot of people have kind of, there's been a little bit of a backlash with them recently. I think part of it is just because a lot of people picked them to win the series. And so I think some people might just be lashing out and frustrated, especially the way that they lost, right? It'd be one thing if they, just got blown out and we're just like, oh, well, this is like, they're just not, like people still mention how they're not ready and whatnot. But this one is rough because they were in all these games until they weren't, right? The Knicks ended up being the better team in this series. But I think just the fact that they got to the finals, still competed in all these games, right? Like we got to learn a lot about the Spurs in terms of like for us, and maybe this is part of the A+ for us. Like, I mean, I know we didn't expect them to be a title contender, right? We had the under on them going into the season, and they more than passed that, got all the way to the finals, still lost in 5, but it's going to be a learning experience for all of them. I'm just very curious as to how they approach this summer. My guess is that they probably run it back, but I do know and understand the issue you got is you have Dylan Harper, who played terrific for a rookie, right? And it went all, and his play extended all the way into the postseason and all the way into the finals. And it feels like he should be a starter next year. But how are you going to balance that with him and Fox and Castle and Vassell? That seems, and Wemby. That's kind of a how you can't start all 6 of those guys. Obviously, you can only have 5. If you start all 3 guards and then Vassell, it's really small. I don't think they're going to be able to trade Fox right now just because he's in the big extension. Maybe they'll look to explore it. I don't know. But at the same time, like they still got to the finals, so it's like it's an A+ for me for both teams. Like not really a whole lot to say, but I do kind of wonder. And then for the Knicks, like like what do? Do they just completely run it back? Do they lose anybody because they can't pay everybody? Like does Mitchell Robinson go because somebody pays him a lot more money? Is there like a surprise? Oh, like we're trading for Giannis. Beat that. Like I'm not saying they should or that they will, but I do wonder like how do they run it back in terms of just allowing everybody to stay. But like with Brunson taking the pay cut, it might be hard for everybody to be like, well, I'm going to get as much money as I can when your superstar takes the pay cut. But also, if another team is willing to give Mitchell Robinson that much money, it'd be hard to say no. I don't know if he'll get like 30 million though in free agency a year. That's a lot, I think, for him. But A+ is for both of them for me.
Yeah, me too. I think it's kind of a no-brainer. Like you said, the ultimate end game goal is to win the NBA Finals, but a great consolation prize is definitely getting there, especially when a lot of people wrote you off um, at the beginning of the season, including us, right? With the Knicks. I think, from top to bottom, this roster was great, and it was even better than last year. And people forget, like, last year was a great season for them because, obviously they were, 2 wins away from being in
Yeah.
this position anyway. So it's no surprise that they even got here. And I think that's kind of part of the logic that I had picking them because they had just a tad bit of experience, right? Of playoff
Mhm.
basketball and how to be composed and whatnot. Not the result in previous years, but yeah, this is great. Top to bottom, love the roster. Like I said, it's much better. You got a little bit of internal development. I don't think people talked about that enough during the season. Obviously, you didn't really get to see it in the finals as much, but throughout the playoffs, like guys like Kolek actually became playable, right? Unlike previous years where he didn't really have a whole lot of bench depth, and then we all know, like Shamit, stuff like that. So, like I said, top to bottom, great roster, great depth. They've kind of got all the bases covered, especially in an Eastern Conference like this, and they just, you know, dominated.
Pummeled
Yeah,
everybody.
exactly. They dominate. I've never seen like something like that where it's just kind of like, they're just it was easy. They made it look easy, and I think that's a testament to how good they are. Not so much a testament to how weak the Eastern Conference is, right? But yeah, once again, shout out to them. And then moving on to the Spurs, same thing. I am a huge advocate of moving on from De'Aaron Fox. I think that they should be prioritizing that. I think Harper showed exactly who he is and why he was drafted where he was and why it makes my freaking blood boil that he's on the Spurs. But nonetheless, I think he's the better player. Was advocating that from the jump. I didn't really like the Fox fit, but like I said in the stream, I kind of talked about this already, but I can't really hate on Fox too much because he is a big part of the reason why they even got there in the first place, right? Up and down in the finals, more down than up, but
Right.
a lot of lapses that I'm just not really. I don't want to make it a De'Aaron Fox
Right.
issue, even though it
Right.
is, because I think there was a lack of discipline in terms of the coaching. Like you can kind of go down the line, right, with what went wrong with the Spurs. There was no discipline, no experience, right? Brain dead plays from Wemby, Castle, even Harper.
Right.
Harper's not innocent in this situation, right? There's a lot of plays where it's just like, wow. And then they missed out on the depth completely, right? You had great plays from Cornette here and there, but then kind of went quiet. Keldon Johnson kind of just vanished like the Avatar. Nobody knows where he went.
He just died.
Exactly. And then, like,
Yeah.
what do? You try and put Harrison Barnes up? No, like, you're just not going to do certain things like that. You're not
Right.
going past a certain number of guys at the NBA Finals like level. That you're just not going to do that. But nonetheless, for a team that a lot of people didn't expect to get there at the beginning of the season, you have to give them an A+. And I hope that they do try and move on from De'Aaron Fox or figure something out to create some space for Dylan Harper's ascension and obviously Stephon Castle's rise as well.
Yeah, the Fox one is tough just because they traded for him
Yeah.
now I guess 2 seasons ago, right at the deadline.
Yeah.
And we didn't know that they were going to get Dylan Harper, right? And they didn't give up much to get Fox. So it's like at the time we're all like, this is a great trade.
Yeah.
This is a wonderful trade for the Spurs where you're getting a veteran point guard to play with Wemby and Castle and and Vassell. Then Harper comes in and it's like, well, the plans may have changed now. So that's kind of the question of what they're going to do in the future. Because the problem is he makes so much money. What's the team for him in terms of like who's got space for a point guard and they're okay with paying him like 50-60 million dollars or whatever for the next several seasons, right? Because I think this is going to be year 1 incoming of like his new deal or whatever, right?
Yeah,
I think at the time, like everybody was like, "Oh, that's a lot of money," but it's like if you're the Spurs, you do it because we kind of just assumed that this was going to be the group for a while. So the plans change, but they will have to figure it out at some point. And I think there was the clip right coming off of the finals, right, where I think it was Vassell who kind of basically was like, "Yeah, Harper at different points was like, kind of not happy with the role he had, right?" And it's like you can see it, right? Just because in terms like he still played hard, but it's like you could tell based off of how good he was playing, you knew internally, like even though I know he mentioned I think earlier in the season, like, yeah, I'm fine with coming off the bench. It's like You're probably not. It's just
No,
like that's what you
no.
say.
And you're
Just
the number 2 pick and look
right.
at the ease at which he scores, right? And that's my
Right.
thing. And not even just scoring on both ends of the floor. Like
Yeah, defense.
I don't want to turn it into like a Dylan Harper glaze fest, but come on guys, like I'm serious. Like the guy gets to the rim
Oh,
at a level that I haven't seen in a long
yeah.
time. And
Mhm.
defensively he's there. The playmaking is probably the only part where it's like what? But the passing, at least at a
Right.
baseline level, is there. There are some passes where it's like, oh wow, I didn't even like see that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's just tough because I mean, like, I think Fox is kind of the guy that you're looking at in the finals to be the guy that you go to at the end of games because Castle and Harper, as pull up guys and shot creators aren't quite there yet. And then it's like, yeah, that didn't happen. So, it's like,
Terrible,
well,
bro.
if he just makes a few more shots, like, hey, does that help? But he didn't. And, maybe he was just not 100% with the high ankle sprain. So that could be part of it.
But
But this
who's
is,
100% in the NBA
yeah,
final?
it's
Jalen
a tough.
Brunson wasn't 100%. You know, like
Yeah.
I can't, and I'm a Fox. Like I like
Yeah.
Fox, like
Yeah.
legit. Like
Wemby,
everybody knows
that
that.
was yeah, when he took out his foot.
Yeah,
Yeah,
everybody knows that I like Fox, but I can't
yeah,
defend this one. You
yeah.
can't.
And I guess with the Spurs, just to put like put it to bed, then
Sure.
obviously Wemby, that's their franchise guy. And it's
Right.
like, we saw, a lot from him and learned a lot about him,
Oh
in
yeah.
terms of like, his growth, as a player and where he still has to grow. Right. Like that's where it's like I don't want to turn it into like a Wemby bash fest. But I have seen like, a lot of people have kind of talked about, I think I saw online, right? Like the question of like, is this like one of the fastest like hero to villain arcs like that we've seen in the league? Like, and it's like part of it's social media. I mean, part of it's also just like it's the winning aspect where it's like young player wins early, everybody says everything positive. Then when it doesn't quite go the way that you thought it would, then it's time to basically just crap all over them. We've seen that like every year with these young players for the last several years. Like it's gonna happen to these other guys. Like so like an Anthony Edwards, obviously Luca, like all these other guys where it's like, yeah, if you're not gonna win in in the first few years, like you're gonna go from hero to zero basically in a
Well,
few years.
and it doesn't help that his opponent happened to be the biggest market in the entire
Yeah.
freaking world in New
And the
York.
Spurs were the favorites too, so that hurts as
Exactly.
well.
But like, bro, it's New
Yeah.
York. Like, of course they're gonna go,
Yeah.
bananas
He might
when mess up.
Yeah, he might be one of the top 3 public enemies in New York right now, so
I don't know, bro. I don't know. I would say I think Trae Young might still be top dog.
well, that's why I said, like, top 3, because it's like I didn't wanna automatically say number 1. I mean, I don't know how much they're worried about him anymore at this point, maybe they will be, like, because who knows, maybe the Wizards are really good and then they knock the Knicks out in the first round, who knows,
Yeah,
but
I doubt that one.
yeah, so moving on, then we move on to the conference finals runner-ups, right? Well, I guess we'll start with OKC. I
Oh
guess we'll just
boy.
start with the Western Conference.
We
I
haven't
want to
talked
start
about this
actually.
team in a while. Jeez.
Yeah, actually, I want to start with you first in terms of the OKC
Mm,
one, because I know, like, obviously, like, you've talked a lot about Shea,
yeah.
and we both picked Oklahoma City to win this series, but I want you to kind of start it
Yeah.
just in terms of like the grade that we're giving them in terms of how you view them this season, because going into the season they were the favorites.
As they should have been.
Hmm.
And that's how much of a belief I still have in the roster.
Hmm.
I'm hesitant between an A and a
Right.
B plus. There
Yeah.
there but I don't want to factor in injury too much to their, season grade and whatnot because that's not in their control. I still think they had a pretty good season, right? Like let me look at the record real quick. Um
64-18.
yeah, they went 64-18. So that's number 1 in the Western Conference. A very strong Western
Won the
Conference.
NBA.
Exactly. Number 1 in the NBA, number 1 in the Western Conference. Very strong conference. So I'm going to give them an A. Like, I love the roster. I think you saw a lot of internal development, especially from, their bench guys like, um, um, geez, holy crap, I'm blanking. What's his name?
AJ Mitchell.
AJ Mitchell, sorry, yeah. AJ Mitchell, and then you had Jared McCain brought in as a midseason addition, right? So I think they did a good job. It's just when they met the Spurs, first of all, it was at an untimely, manner in terms of J-Dub not being able to be 100% or even close to 100% and missing, some games in the series. But like that was a really, really rough game 7. And I think that might change people's opinions on the team, because I don't think it's going to change people's opinions on Shea, because what a masterclass performance he had. But the other guys like Chet not showing up and just being kind of like a timid mouse on the court, where it's like, you're not even attempting to go at these guys at all. And that's the thing that I liked about the Knicks, right? They're able to go at these guys, right? They're not afraid of Wemby. It didn't matter who it was. They were willing to take that matchup and say, you know what? If he's going to defend us well, he's going to defend us well, but we at least have to try. Like Chet was just not shooting the ball. Anyways, with the Thunder though, I think you either you either move on from Chet potentially, but I know it's going to be tough to do that, because who's willing to, take on a contract like that? But the problem is all their flexibility is kind of going out of the window, because I think Chet and J-Dub's extensions kick in next season, right? Yeah. So there's not too many changes that they can make, but overall, I don't think this was a bad season for them. I just think they underperformed due to injury, so I can't really knock them too much for that. So I still give them an A.
Yeah, I had it at a B+. I guess, if you compare it, I guess, relative to what we've seen the last several years, right? Like, they did the best of any of the recent defending champs. One game away from the NBA Finals, weren't 100%. Right. It's just, I guess the thing is, it's like everybody kind of has the memory of what we last saw of them. And it's like the last thing that we saw, like you mentioned, was Shea had a great game, right? Because everybody was like, what's he going to look like in game 7? Because he was kind of up and down in that series, but he had a great game 7. Then you have Chet, and it's like, well, if they're going to win this game 7, you're probably going to need him to have a relatively big game, because we already knew J-Dub wasn't going to play. Yep. And then he doesn't, right? And that was the immediate conversation coming out, where it's like, what happened to this guy, right? Because he was awesome the first 2 rounds in the playoffs. And then in the Spurs series, it actually got worse as the series went on, when you were kind of hoping that he would snap out of it. And I think he had, 4 points? I think he attempted maybe 2 shots. Yes. And they were in the first minute or so of the game. I think he scored the first points for OKC. Yes. And then we just never heard from him offensively again, right? And it was passing up shots and everything else. It wasn't like he just had a bad game. He was just mentally just gone. He was checked out.
That's what I'm saying, yeah. Like a mouse.
And that's the question for OKC. I would probably say, I think the most likely scenario is they probably run it back. Maybe they might trade some of those picks or some of the other guys that are in the depth part of their roster. Maybe swap out some pieces, maybe Dort's gone, and it's just we move up Case and Wallace. Or maybe you move I don't know, Isaiah Joe or Aaron Wiggins for stuff or whatever. And or maybe they have a lottery pick, so they might use that. Whomever they take, we don't know who they take. I don't think there's going to be drastic changes, but that's the main thing is I think because everybody expected them to win game 7 and then they didn't, now everybody's low on them, but they're still going to be really good. And if they're fully healthy, they're still going to be one of the teams to beat in the Western Conference. It's just, obviously it's just tough because everybody was all over the map with them right in the beginning of the season. It's are they going to win 78 games or whatever? Then they have the injuries, and then they get to the conference finals and lose in 7. So it's tough, but I think they'll be fine. But it would be a B+ just because it's of all the defending champs, they were a game away from the finals. So even though it's a quote unquote failed season because you didn't win the title, you still competed. You got about as far as you could given the health circumstances where you needed J-Dub against that team. You didn't have to have him against Phoenix or LA. But you needed to have him against a mostly healthy Spurs team, right? Because Fox was out for the first couple of games, so OKC not taking advantage of the one main game that J-Dub played, and then they still lost. That hurts. But I would say all in all, it's still a good season for Oklahoma City, where it's you're still gonna be around. It's just a matter of is the gap starting to get a little bit closer, because now you have the Spurs and whatnot, so it's maybe they're not just gonna run roughshod over everybody, but the year before they didn't. Yeah. Because they were pushed to the brink against the Nuggets, and then obviously against the Pacers. It's just a different game in the playoffs. But regular season wise, they're perfectly fine. It's just and they're still young. They're not the youngest team in the league like the Spurs, but they're still one of the younger teams in the league. So like on paper, these guys should get better, but they got to sit Chet down and like kind of talk to him and kind of like figure out like how can we not have that happen again? Because
Yeah,
like that's the other thing where it's like you didn't have J-Dub, but like if Chet was like good, you could probably still win, but he wasn't good enough. But it's also kind of like, yeah, this is like why he's probably the third best player on the team,
of
probably not the
course.
second best player on the team, because that's kind of what people felt like. But it was only because, in my opinion, because J-Dub was out. I think if he plays and he's healthy the whole year, it wouldn't have looked like that. So
Yeah,
I'm not really too
what a
worried.
rough outing for him
Yeah.
though. Yuck.
Yeah. Cleveland Cavaliers. Okay, this one is actually funny. So I actually settled on a B for this one. I actually did. I
Really?
settled on I did. I
That's
did.
high.
And I know. The main reason why is only because you did get to the conference finals. You got pushed and batted around by the Knicks, right? So it wasn't like OKC, right? But I do think at least on paper, if you're Cleveland, you could say like, all right, this is our most successful season that we've had with this group. But the only problem is, where do you actually go from here? How much better can you actually be if you're Cleveland? Because of the fact that like now you went with an older group, right? Where you swapped out Garland for Harden. He didn't. I mean, he didn't have like the greatest postseason, but you also didn't have the best postseason from your other guys as well, right? Like Mitchell was kind of up and down. Mobley was kind of up and down. Although like he played, I guess, relative to what you would like to see, he was fine. But the main question now is like, okay, how can you be better? Could you actually get to the finals? That's the one where it's like, I don't know if I feel good about that. But then the other problem is, I don't even think you can blow it up because you moved on from Garland. I think if you had kept Garland, you could say, all right, we could trade Mitchell and then just have like Garland and Mobley trade Allen and do whatever you want to do. But now that you traded Garland, you can't even really do that. So you're kind of just stuck. But maybe you could hope that maybe you could find some type of forward or maybe reconfigure some other stuff. So it's like it, all you needed to do was not lose game one. If you didn't lose game one, I don't think anybody would necessarily be like, oh, that was one of the worst things I've ever seen in my life. But because they lost game one and then proceeded to get swept, despite the analytics saying that they should have been up 3-2 or whatever that was,
Yep.
they got swept. So that's the problem, is that it's their most successful season since they've gotten Mitchell, but I don't necessarily come out of it saying, "Oh yeah, they can be even better than that." I don't know. Like it would have to be like you would have to not be playing the Knicks more than likely. I don't know who's the team they match up against better. Like if it was Cavs Pistons conference finals, okay. I guess they beat this version of the Pistons because they beat them in the second round. But it's just like I don't see it with that group unless they add like somebody that I don't expect and then also reconfigure some stuff. It just feels like core wise, there's some things that you just don't have that you need that I don't know if you can get enough of it, right? Where it's like you have Harden and Mitchell as two guards who are good offense, very good offensive players, or at least Mitchell is, but they don't defend. And the offense didn't feel quite as elite as it could be because they don't move the ball that fast. And then you have Mobley and Allen, where it's like Mobley's offense in the playoffs just feels a little bit more up and down. And it's not like the Cavs ever felt like a dominant defense this postseason either. So you kind of have a lot of questions about like all your guys, where it's like that's not really a spot you really want to be in coming out of like your most successful season to date. But it's like they did get to the conference finals. But if somebody wants to fight me and give them like a lower grade, I don't really have an issue with it because it's like, yeah, you got to the conference finals, but you got smoked. Like it wasn't even like one of those competitive 4 or 5 game series. Only game one was really that close. Other than that, it was a beatdown. And then the last game was exceptionally bad. Although I guess the Knicks did that to basically everybody except the Spurs.
Okay. So this team got where last year?
If you were talking about this season that just happened, conference finals. Before that,
Yeah, before
second
that.
round because they
Right.
got bounced by Indiana in 5.
Right. So they pretty much won the same amount of playoff games last year that they did this year, correct?
Let's see. I think they
Roughly.
won 5, and now they won what, like 8?
Okay. So
Yeah,
I don't know, bro. Here's my thing.
right.
you got to the conference finals and
Right.
you got crapped on.
Yeah.
So I mean,
Yes.
I have to give them like a C plus. I would give
Okay.
them a B ish if Garland was still on the team, because
Mhm.
now I don't feel like you've accomplished much. I think the Harden trade was supposed to be an upgrade for them, and I don't feel as though it was, because you really didn't get much further. Yeah, you got to the conference finals, great, but you didn't win a game. So
It's mainly because Garland's been hurt.
I get it, and I get that. Like they had to make a tough decision, but I don't think Harden was the right move. Like I would have liked to have seen them given the Garland thing maybe one more year, but who knows
Yeah.
what he would have looked like in the playoffs, especially in the East, like how it was. But I don't know. I
Mhm.
just was not impressed with what I saw from Harden. I was not impressed with what I saw from the team as a whole, right? And they're just not
Right.
the same team that we saw, where their offense was just phenomenal last year, right? So,
Mhm.
and that's due to lack of depth now, and then, some big changes in terms of, what they do offensively. So I don't know. My belief in that team kind of just went out the window last year, to be honest. Like I'm kind of
Yeah.
just not forever low on them, but when I see Cleveland, I kind of scoff, because I just know their ceiling is probably this. Like, and I'm not, and not conference finals this, getting swept in the conference finals this. There's a big difference between getting there, winning a couple games or winning one game, and getting swept. There's a big difference between the two. So, not a huge fan of the end result, but they did have a bit of a rallying presence. I'll give them that. Like, middle of the season, kind of weird, and then they kind of picked it
Mhm.
up. Whatever, with
Yeah.
once Harden got on the team, and they figured out stuff like Jared Allen became more involved, which is great. Like I
Yeah.
like the way that they found ways to get their other guys involved. However, at what
Mhm.
cost with postseason performances like
Yeah.
that?
Right. And if you want to give more credence to like the C plus or like even lower than a B plus or whatever, like you could say like, all right, going into the season, everybody picked either the Knicks or the Cavs for the most part to make the East, to come out of the East.
Sure.
But most people picked the Knicks.
Yeah.
Not very many people picked Cleveland because of the trust issues,
Yeah.
right? And it's like coming out of the playoffs now, we still feel really good about the Knicks, right? Whereas like the Knicks feel like the top of the East. We don't feel that way about Cleveland. It feels like Cleveland is probably closer to everyone else in the Eastern Conference, where it's like, yeah, I probably wouldn't automatically pick Cleveland over some of these other teams the way that you might have thought about it going into the playoffs 2 years ago when they won 64 games.
Yeah.
So that's the problem for them, where it's like, okay, yeah, like, do we come out of this season feeling better about Cleveland or worse about Cleveland? It's like, at best, indifferent, probably. I don't know if I would say better. I would have to see like actual upgrades to the roster, right, in order to feel better about it. And even then, they would still have to prove it. It wasn't like this was a scenario where it's like, oh, they had injuries or whatever, so it's like we just need to see them a little bit healthier. It's like, no, it just didn't work out this time, and you got whooped by New York. Looks like we just got something from Mark Spears talking about Trae Young opting out of his player option. Says we'll enter free agency. Wizards remain the front runner, but quote unquote, he still expects multiple team max interest. So keep an eye on that.
Oh
So
my God, you can't make it up.
yeah. So after that, now we move on to the teams that I guess were in the second round. Would you rather start off with the Eastern ones or the Western ones?
Uh, we can go East.
All right. So our options now, I guess, would be Philly. um, yeah, the Philadelphia 76ers and the Detroit Pistons. So Philly, I mean, C plus, I guess, in the way of like, I don't really come out of it feeling any different about Philly than I did before. I guess on paper, it's like, okay, when they're healthy, they're a good team. But the problem is, I'm just not convinced that we're ever going to see that main version of it, right? Like we kind of got it right in the first round against Boston when Embiid came back from injury, right, or from the appendectomy, excuse me, came back from that. I guess it still counts as an injury, but comes back from that late through the series. They come back down 3-1, and then they get whooped by New York, and Embiid, I think, missed a game, and by that point didn't look like himself. That's kind of the main thing, right? It's like going into the season, we didn't know what to expect from Philly. We're like, okay, if they're healthy, they should be good. If they're not healthy, they're not going to be good. And we didn't get a ton of games with their main three guys together for most of the season, right? And then we got the playoffs. The main thing is that it's great that they got Edgecombe. That's the main thing that will probably make you feel fine about Philly long term, just because like okay, Maxey had a great regular season, and then Edgecombe now comes in as a rookie, but I still don't moving forward feel that amazing about George or Embiid, even though they were good against Boston. I just don't necessarily expect it to be better. Like I don't expect them to be healthier. I don't expect them to be better as the seasons go on, and it's like yeah, this is probably about what I thought that their ceiling would be anyways. It's like if they're healthy, or reasonably healthy, like you should be able to get to the conference finals, but then it's like you didn't. You lost in the second round and got swept by the Knicks. So it's like they haven't gotten any further in the postseason than they got before. And it doesn't really feel like they're closer because like next year the East is going to continue to be better. So it's kind of just like a lot of blah. But, I at least was glad that we got to at least see the group together because we thought they'd be good. But then, like against the Knicks, it didn't look the same, right? Because the Knicks are better team than the Celtics, despite what people might have thought going into the postseason. So it's like it's a lot of nothing for me, other than like Edgecombe.
Yeah, I congratulate them for beating the Celtics. That I actually
Yeah,
do give
that's an
them their
accomplishment.
props for because I thought Boston had that one. Obviously, the Tatum
Maybe
thing.
that's me being unfair.
Yeah, and
So I'll
Tatum's health, helps them in that scenario. But yeah, I still give them a C because you got swept by the Knicks. Like I just wanted to give them their props. They're
yeah,
very they're very tiny, minuscule props that
yeah,
they
yeah,
wholeheartedly
yeah,
deserve.
yeah,
But yeah, at the end of the day, like I think the Knicks set the bar in this postseason for the Eastern Conference, and that's why the grading is going to be so skewed, and it's probably going to fall off so drastically,
oh,
compared to other teams. No, I'm serious. In the Eastern Conference, that is right. Just because look at the competition, like cool, you beat the Boston Celtics, but then when you get to that Knicks, it's just 4 L's in a row. Like you couldn't even get one, right? And that
yeah,
that goes for every team that the Knicks face
yeah. I
outside of
thought
the
it would go
Spurs.
7, so
Yeah, no, that did not
that didn't
happen.
happen.
So,
That didn't happen at all.
and I
So
think they've got a lot of things to address.
mhm.
The flashes were there, like you said. But it is nice that they have a little bit of a future. I do like the pairing of Maxey and Edgecombe. That's kind of the thing that's got me
Yeah,
on the hype train for Philly. But at the same time, the thing that's bogging this team down is you can't ignore it. Is Paul George and freaking Joel Embiid, and they're waning health, I would say.
yeah, yeah. It's wild because those guys played very well in the Celtics series, and
Yeah,
then in the Knicks series, you almost didn't even really notice they were there,
my
like
point.
at different points. I mean, Embiid had some good games, and like maybe he just wasn't 100%, but that's just kind of been unfortunately like the reoccurring thing
What's new?
with Philly. So it's like there's not a whole lot you can really do there. That's the problem is that like when they first got those guys together, everybody was like, okay, if they're healthy, they should be like a finals contender. But it's like they don't feel like it. And maybe that might just be the Knicks, like just beating the crap out of everybody, that it just doesn't feel like it. But, like if they were on the in the other bracket, and let's say they played, like Detroit, and then, do they beat Detroit? And if they do, how do they look against Cleveland? Maybe it looks better. I don't know. But the
Yeah,
problem is like you can't really necessarily look at it that way because you have to go through the top teams at some point. And I just don't necessarily feel like in the playoffs I would trust Philly against New York because I don't expect them to be healthy. And I do feel like they need to kind of figure out some of the age and attrition aspects. Because, like, say for Paul George, once he got to the Knicks series, then he looked kind of old, right? Then it didn't really look like how it did in Boston, which is funny because, like, you would think on Boston, like, based off of the wing personnel, like, you would think that would be a tough matchup for him, and it actually wasn't, right? And he guarded those guys pretty well. But then against the Knicks, like, offensively, he kind of just fell off a cliff,
yeah.
unfortunately. So that's kind of where, like, the young players, that's cool. Maxi and Edgecombe, that's cool, but I just don't necessarily know, like, next year, like, do I expect them to go further? No, I don't. Like, and
Exactly.
that's kind of the part that's disappointing where, like, if you told Philly fans like, hey, back when they signed Paul George and put this group together, like, hey, you're gonna get these guys together, you might win one playoff series. That wouldn't feel so good.
No,
So like that's
terrible.
so but like you said, to be fair, it is an accomplishment that like you can't just poo-poo that they took out Boston, who everybody thought was going to be potentially one of the teams to beat in the East. So that's me being probably a little bit unfair, but at the same time, it's like
I
you
mean,
beat the Celtics, great, but then it got completely basically erased because of the fact that like now you lose to the Knicks. But who knows? That may end up forcing Boston into making some changes. So I mean, Philly at least did something there, but
well,
not enough for me to feel better about them going forward. It's like I don't really feel any different.
yeah, I get that. I mean, we had the same grade, but just
Yeah,
different philosophies
yeah.
on it, I guess.
Detroit, now we move to Detroit. I'll let you start off with this one.
Debating between I don't want to say a D, but a C.
Oh
I
wow.
would probably go with a C. Just because, hear me out. Just because the Magic series should not have gone 7 games. Well, I had Magic in 7, but um,
Yeah.
if we're gonna scale them, based on where
Hmm.
they were ranked, in the Eastern
Hmm.
Conference, is the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. Like, come on, bro. Like, they were not supposed to go 7 games against the Magic, and then you get to Cleveland, and then what? Was that also 7? I think it was
Yes.
7. Yeah, and it's
They
like
did. Yeah.
the inexperience, the lack of offense at times,
Hmm.
from a specific person was really hard to watch. Like, Jalen Darryn had one of the biggest fall offs I've ever seen. From
Yeah.
a regular season all star to a
Yes.
non-factor
All
on
NBA.
on both ends of the floor.
Yeah.
It's not just one end of the floor, right?
Yeah.
Defensively, guys were going at him like they didn't care, and then
Yeah.
offensively, if the roll isn't there, he kind of just stands there and holds his nuts. I really don't get it. So my thing is like,
Yeah.
right, like I don't want to say D. I'll give them a C just because you
Okay.
can't disregard the regular season, right? But
Yeah.
the playoffs was bad,
Yeah.
and I think there's going to be a conversation about Darryn, maybe his future. Like,
Hmm.
is he off the team? Does he just miss out on a crap ton of money because he stunk it up? Right. But something needs to happen in Detroit. I think they need more, which is kind of
Yeah.
crazy to even say, considering that this team won 60 games. But clearly, you need
Mhm.
something. You need a different look in the postseason. It's not going to work. And, we love their defense. We love their attitude, right? Throughout the regular season. It was great. Like,
Mhm.
team basketball, one of the best team defenses in the league. But my God, like, it can't just be Cade and nothing. Like, there's too much
Yeah.
Cade, not enough space. Like, literally. Like,
Mhm.
I'm being
Yeah.
serious. Like, Cade draws a double. Who does he have to kick out to, right? Like, these guys are non-factors. Like, they're not guarding Darryn, and he's not making an effort, to even really get open and find a look. And that's just oddly funny because in the regular season, that was not the case. Cade was drawing doubles all regular season.
Yeah.
Jalen Darryn found a way. Somebody found a way, but they just couldn't do anything. So I expect them to maybe finesse some sort of package, maybe get like, I don't know, like a Markkanen or something. I don't know. Get somebody to help beef up this offense because I think they have the leeway to sacrifice just a little bit of defensive intensity to bring in a guy
Mhm.
that, is going to get them a certified bucket when Cade's tripled.
Yeah. I had a B minus, so I wasn't
Really?
quite as I did. And it was mainly just because like my expectations like going into the season were not necessarily like I had the over. I remember we did the over under and I had the over. I thought they're probably going to win a playoff series and then that's probably it. So they pretty much kind of did what I thought they would. But to be fair, the reason why like I wouldn't give them any higher than that, right? And where I can understand a lower grade is because well, they didn't just overperform in the regular season. They were even better. Like they won 60 games, like you mentioned, and Jalen Duren rose to an All NBA player. And then the problem was the postseason, where all of a sudden, like other than Cade, like a lot of that other stuff kind of died, right? Where it's like you mentioned, Duren on both ends of the floor just looked lost, right? Just didn't look quite as skilled in terms of his off. And it's not like he can shoot. It's just like, even like the passing, the playmaking, the short rolls, the face-up game, none of it was there. And they were kind of trying to figure out, like, can we play Asor Thompson X amount of minutes? Can we play Jalen Darryn X amount of minutes? Like, Tobias Harris, you might actually be our second best player, and that's not a great spot to be in. Like I said, the Ivy part kind of just kills them in the sense of, like, that could have been a guy where, like, if he had not gotten hurt and had actually been, what we thought he was going to be before he got injured, right? Then that's something where it's like, okay, there's another offensive initiator to help out Cade. The main thing is you feel really good about Cade moving forward. It's just the question is the rest of the roster, what does it look like? Like, if you ran back the same team, are you going to get much further than you did last year? Like, the problem is probably not. And that's where it's like, yeah, you may have to try to go and get like a Markkanen or some type of offensive guy who can get you, like, can get you consistent offense that you have to pay attention to, in a way where, like, it should make Cade's job easier. Like you said, without completely just gutting your defense, right? Because that's the funny thing is, like, on paper, you're looking at the starting five and you're like, Duncan Robinson and Tobias Harris are in there and you're really good on defense. Okay, that's interesting. But that's where it's like, yeah, coming out of the playoffs, like, I don't know. Like you said, the Darryn question is tough because he was not good at
Yeah.
all. And so, like, there were very few positives. I still think he probably gets re-signed, just probably for less than he would have gotten maybe if he had a really good postseason. I mean, like, even then, like, that would still be a lot of money to give him like 50 million a year, regardless. But you wouldn't feel good doing it right now. So that at least probably gives Detroit a little bit more flexibility. And there's not a ton of teams with cap space, so it's like, how many other teams are going to be competing to give him more than what Detroit would give him? I don't know, but at least, like, at least, like, they didn't get annihilated. I mean, they got annihilated by Cleveland in Game 7, but it's like, if you had to lose and not get to the conference finals, like, at least it went 7, and it's like, okay, you had to melt. I think it was Game 5, right? That was the one where they kind of melted down at the end, and Cleveland stole it in overtime, right? I think that was that one where they just, like, didn't score.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, you had a game where, like, you could have ended the series if you had gotten that win. But like you said, the problem is, are we leaving this season with more questions for Detroit or more answers for Detroit? And we're still having some more questions about the roster moving forward. Like, it's like they overperformed in the regular season, but then the expectations were raised and they did not meet those expectations for some of the individual players. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, if they had lost in 7, but it's like, okay, Darryn plays well. Now, maybe if he plays well, they actually go further. Then that's part of it. So that's like the main thing. Like, if he was better, you probably go further than you probably get to the conference finals. But like you said,
Absolutely.
that's a big question though, is because he was supposed to be your second best player. You have to figure out what you're gonna do. Because, like, is he worth the money or is he not? And if he's not, then what are you gonna do instead, right? Where it's like, but like I said, I think he'll still be back. But it's like, I'm not gonna kill the team, but so much, because they still, I think, did better than what I would have thought going into the season. But it also sucks where it's like you were the only 60-win team to not get past the second round.
Yeah.
That's the part that's
It's
bad.
pathetic. And
Because the other,
it was a
yeah,
struggle the whole time. It wasn't easy.
yeah,
Like, people are acting like the Orlando
right.
series was easy. No, that was
That's the other, yeah,
a very hard watch if you were a Detroit fan.
right, yeah. Like, really, it kind of comes down to, like, okay, Franz Wagner, if he doesn't get hurt, they probably win one more game, right?
Yeah, I agree.
So then yeah, I'm talking about, like, Orlando. Then it looks different. Like, if they had gone out in the first round, that's where it's like nobody's giving them higher than a C
Yeah.
at all. Yeah, where, like, but that kind of saved their bacon. But it's like
I
the
still
problem
can't
is
do it.
like that, yeah, it's just the problem is like whether they had lost to Orlando or Detroit, we would or Cleveland, we would still have the same questions. That's the problem for them. So it's like no one's giving them an A, and like B minus is about the best I can give them.
Yeah, I agree.
Then we move on to the Western Conference, and we'll start with the Minnesota Timberwolves, right? So in terms of the grade there, this one is interesting, right? Because I'm gonna set it at a B, because it's the same thing where it's like, okay, well, not same as Detroit, but like you got probably as far as you could have reasonably gotten given the circumstances, right? Where it's like you pulled off an amazing upset over the Nuggets in the first round, right? Where it's like you had a bunch of injuries. Anthony Edwards missed like the latter part of the series. DiVincenzo tears his Achilles. Dosunmu, who scored 40 in a game, then gets hurt and doesn't close out the series, and you still found a way to win, right? So, like, that's awesome. Then in the second round, you lose to the Spurs, and that was kind of rough after pulling out the game one win upset. But then it's like, you still were missing a couple of guys. They weren't 100%. So it's like, I can't completely fault them for losing to the Spurs. The Spurs at that point were just a better team. But, then the issue still remains, like some of these other teams, you still have questions about this group, right? Because it's like, you're this time around, Randall did not have a strong postseason like he did last year up until the OKC series. And now you're hearing all this Giannis stuff. Dosunmu you would like to bring back. How much does he cost to bring back? This team is gonna have to be better, right? Because that's the main thing, is that like the last two postseasons, they overperformed relative to expectations. This time around, it was probably like about what you might have expected. Like they overperformed in the first round, then maybe in the second round, if they were healthy, maybe it might have been better. Like, this is about where I would have kind of thought Minnesota would have been like last year, but they got to the conference finals. But then this year they got out in the second round. So it's like, I'm not really mad at it. It's just the thing is, like, the team is going to have to improve. I don't think this same team is going to be better next season if they just ran it back. Like, they'll probably still be good, but I still feel like they're not going to be quite good enough to beat like Oklahoma City or San Antonio. And those are the teams that you're going to have to compete against. So it's like, it's a solid season, but it also sucks that like this ended up being our least successful season of the last 3 seasons, right? Where like now you didn't get to the conference finals again, and it doesn't necessarily feel like they're getting closer. It feels like they've kind of maybe just plateaued. So they're probably going to have to shake some things up. But the first round upset over the Nuggets was cool. So it's like that bumps it up. Like if they had just lost in the first round to Denver, then it would probably be like a C plus or whatever. But pulling off the upset and then at least losing in 6, like that's a B for me.
Yeah, it's a B for me as well. I think I just walk away with a lot of questions about what this team can
Mhm.
truly be, with this
Yeah.
form, right? Like you love Desumu, you love bringing him in, and that he was great. Like you shout out to him. You love DiVincenzo. I hope he returns to form, but certain guys have to go.
Mhm.
Like Julius Randle has to go. I'm being serious. Like I'm not a fan of what I saw, especially in the Spurs series. Like I think that was a
Oh,
series where if he played, at an elite level for an X
yeah.
factor that he could really be at times,
Mhm.
then I think they probably could have taken out the Spurs. I'm gonna be honest. Like
Game 1 Randall, if you got that like every game, that would probably be enough.
exactly with Ant playing at his pinnacle and stuff, but you know, mm, I don't know, bro. Like this team, like I said, it just makes me question
Yeah.
more and more and more. I think you can keep the core of McDaniels, Ant,
Mhm.
and Gobert. I think that can
Mhm.
work, but you've got to find the right pieces to put around them. And I don't
Yeah.
think Randall fits the puzzle anymore. Like it just isn't gonna work. It can't.
And please find a point guard.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like you need a legit point guard that can stabilize the offense, but not take away from what the other guys do. Right? Like you
Yeah.
just need that commanding presence, and I hope they find that. I doubt it'll be
Yeah.
through the draft because last
Yeah.
time they tried that didn't work out too hot. Like, and Desumu's a point guard, but not the one that we're talking about here.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Just like DiVincenzo, he's not a point guard.
yeah, so I hope they do address one of the two
Yeah.
things, and maybe
Mhm.
you address the point guard thing before you move Randall, or maybe you move Randall in the hopes of getting that calming presence in return.
Yeah.
But who knows what they do? But I think everybody
Mhm.
knows what they need to do.
Yeah. Because that's the tough one, right? Because it's like, like the old school point guards are gone, but it still feels like you need to have like somebody who can kind of, like you said, just like settle everything. Because it's like at the highest level, I don't necessarily feel comfortable with like Anthony Edwards without like another good ball handling guard in the starting five. Like just against like a team like OKC, that just feels like a lot to ask,
Yeah,
right? Now maybe if that other ball handler shot creator is a wing or a forward, okay, maybe you can overcome that, but they don't have that. I guess you could argue it's McDaniels, but Not really. So
No,
like
he's
that's
not a. He's
it's supposed
far from a calming presence.
right. It's supposed to be Randall, and like that hasn't really worked out. So
No,
we'll see which angle they address. I mean, there's if you want to mention it, if there's a guy that you've been talking about, a certain guard in San Antonio that maybe Minnesota could opt to snatch up.
why
You know,
not? Make it
yeah,
happen. Make it a
yeah,
reality.
yeah. Like say if it was like Randall plus whatever else you needed to get, and then like there you go. That
I'd be
could be
cool with
your
that.
yeah. I don't know. It would have to be Randall plus probably I don't know, maybe like one of the guys off the bench. Like, would it have to be like Nas Reed or something like that? I don't know, but
Who knows? But I'd do
yeah,
it in a heartbeat. Like, and I'd especially do it if I'm San Antonio because I think the finals proved everything,
mhm,
that you need to do.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. Then and like with all the guards, then maybe Randall doesn't hurt you as much if he has a weird game. I don't know. It's kind of a weird fit, but if you're somebody who feels like they have to move off of Fox, maybe that could be something that could be done.
yeah, why not? I'd go for it.
Right? Yeah. Now we move on to LA. What did you think of that one? I'll let you kick this one off. What'd you give them?
Um, oh boy, this one's rough.
All right,
Um,
what'd you give them?
I give them. It's not as bad as I thought.
Okay.
I'll give them
What'd
a
you give them?
B. I'll give them a B.
Okay, all right, we're on the same
Yeah,
page.
I'll give them a B because going into the first round series. Okay, let's not even talk about the Thunder series, please. Right?
That's
Cool.
right.
We cannot talk. Okay, we'll talk about it
Sure.
at later. But with the Rockets Lakers series, I thought you know the Rockets were gonna win that one. I think I was one of the only people who picked the Rockets. Um,
They were the favorites to win that series.
I know, but I'm talking about like when we were
Yeah.
making our picks or whatever.
I had Rockets in 5
Oh,
because,
you did?
and like
I don't remember
yeah,
that. I thought I could
I
have
did.
swore you picked LA. Okay.
No, it was Rockets in 5, like because Reeves and Luca didn't play, I didn't feel comfortable picking LA at all. Now
Okay.
I didn't know Durant wasn't gonna play, but
Yeah.
even then I still probably win it going in, would have still probably picked Houston if I didn't know Durant was gonna play.
Yeah.
I
But
just would have thought it would have gone further. I thought it could have been like maybe Rockets in like 6
okay.
or something
Fair
like that.
enough.
But
Yeah, but yeah, with the Lakers though, you give a shout out to them because I don't think um there was like I don't know. Maybe I'm using the wrong words here, but I didn't think there was an overwhelming majority of people that actually believed in the Rockets, especially once the KD
mm,
news, started breaking where it's like, all right, this guy's just not going to play.
mm,
And that honestly was great for the Lakers because I don't want to say they got lucky, but it definitely helped them out. And I liked a lot of the things that they did. They kind of I don't want to say destroyed the Rockets, but kind of decimated any
yeah, game
chance.
6 they did.
Yeah,
Game
any
6.
chance that any chance that Rockets fans thought they had of winning that series just kind of went out the window at certain points in this series, right? They kind of made the Rockets look foolish, and I think that's a testament to the coaching. I think that's the number one thing that I liked from the Lakers season. Like, yeah,
Mhm,
great. Luka was phenomenal, right? Up until he got hurt.
right.
And then obviously AR was solid, got hurt. Braun, speaks for itself, but I
Mhm,
thought the adaptability from JJ Redick and what he was able to do, especially when it came to the postseason, I thought it was great. Having
mhm,
certain rotations out there, having guys match up very, very well against a Houston Rockets team that was very disappointing. But nonetheless, the reason why they're disappointing is because of the Lakers' defense and what they were able to do um, for long stretches of the game, and then obviously the offensive attack I think was pretty balanced, especially considering that they were hobbled. And then, with the Thunder series, I mean, that it is what it is. It was a sweep.
yeah,
They were far from
yeah,
100%.
and we knew that was gonna
Yeah,
happen.
we all knew that was going to happen. Once, we figured Luca wasn't going to play, like we all knew, like sweep
Yeah,
pretty much. And then
yeah,
Reeves was not even close to 100%. So, I think there are questions with the Lakers, big questions going forward. I know some people are like nuke the whole roster, right? But um, I'm not on that train. I think we got to be realistic here. They don't they don't take a lot of drastic measures. I don't think that's not the team that
Mm.
It's not the management that I really see. I mean, obviously, had one of the biggest drastic measures in a long time with
Yeah.
the Luka trade. Nobody's still over that, by the way. But um, still, once they have their guys, they don't really like to shift around a whole lot. So I think Braun comes back. Obviously, I think they do need to address the center room for sure. I don't think Ayton is the long term sustainable option there. Rui, what do you do with him?
Right.
Reeves, what goes on with that? Because I think
Mhm.
there's probably going to be some teams out there that would offer him a bag and a half, and maybe the Lakers just don't want to invest in that, especially considering we probably at this point know that maybe Reeves and Luka aren't going to be able to play together defensively. Like, I don't know how that's going to work. So, like I said, there's questions. There's a lot of retooling that you can do, but it kind of sucks that you're still in this limbo transition period of like Luka era and LeBron era, because I think that's the problem. So, like, if LeBron is gone, then I think it opens up a little bit more fluidity in terms of what you can potentially do and bring in the certain types of guys that can really help,
Mm.
Luka more so than the team as a whole, if that makes sense. But, um, I think that something needs to happen here, but I just don't know what it is because certain dominoes have to fall first around the
Right.
league and internally within that Lakers org. But I
Yeah.
still give them a B for, getting out of the first round.
Yeah. I had it as a B as well, just because, I know the expectations for the team going into the season were not really that high, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think I remember we had differences in terms of what we thought on their offseason, but we both felt like the ceiling is probably second round at best, if they get some breaks to go their way, but then like more than likely like first round. And so they kind of exceeded the expectations of they won a playoff series. And then they lost in the second round. But you were one of the 8 last teams standing. Yeah, the Rocket series was a weird one, right? Just because like going in, they were like pretty heavy underdogs. Without Luca and Austin Reeves. I went back and I looked at the odds, even like with Durant not playing, the only game that Houston wasn't favored was game 5. I think that was the game in LA where we thought they would close them out in LA and then they ended up losing. But like you said, coming out of the season, you got great play from Luca, right? And the stretch of March that they had was awesome. But what do you do with the rest of the roster in the summer, right? Like, because like you said, you have to figure out how much money are you willing to give Austin Reeves. I believe he'll be back. I just don't know what his max will be. Like, is he going to make 40 million a year? Is he going to make like 45 million a year? Is it 35 million? That's the part that I don't know. They can give him the extra year, but are they going to be willing to go all the way to the final max? Whatever that is. I think it's like what, like 237 or something like that.
Yeah.
So that would be a lot of money. And I think there are people that are really split on, like you said, the belief of whether or not like you can win at the highest level with those two guys, right? And it's like we've had questions about that with other duos, but we had time to kind of see what they would do. Like even like say Brunson and Towns or Jokic and Murray, we haven't seen these guys together enough with the other pieces around them. And that's like you said, where you go into the summer. What do you do? Do you bring LeBron back? If you bring him back, how much will you be willing to give him? Are you going to give him like the MLE or less? Or is he more like 20, 30, 35 million or whatever? That kind of, like you said, opens some possibilities of what they could do. Like ideally, if you can bring him back for the MLE or less or whatever, and then you still have the flexibility to do whatever else you can do that. But we don't know what's going to happen, right? So like if he's like I want 25 million, they may end up not doing that and he may end up being gone. Like you said, I think he'll be back as well. I don't know what the final dollar amount is. The only issue is that like once you kind of do that, then you resign, and then let's say you resign Rui, bring back Smart, then you're kind of almost running back the same team, which probably isn't good enough to
Yeah.
do much better than they did this past season. So that's where, like you said, you kind of have to figure out like, can you get the wings? Can you get the bigs? Like you said, Aiton isn't the long term answer as the starting center. So can you get somebody better? The thing with them is like they always do stuff that we don't really expect. So it's like so it's like all the reporting that's come out, we don't know if that's actually going to happen because more often than not, it's something completely different that nobody expects. And it's very difficult to predict what they're going to do. So, like, if they just completely ran it back, if you're a Laker fan, which I would be, right? Like that would be kind of disappointing because
Yeah.
you probably wouldn't be much better. If you let LeBron walk and then you just replace him with like mediocre players, that wouldn't necessarily feel great either.
True.
So can you find some type of middle ground, whether or not it's bringing him back with other guys or getting somebody better? I don't know what they do. So, but like you said, the main thing is they want a playoff series. They did. I don't think they went into the season with championship expectations, or I don't think the organization did.
No.
So yeah, so it's
Nobody
like
thought they were winning the chip, bro.
right, you know what I mean? And I don't think the organization went into this with that mindset. I think they're focusing on this summer specifically. But if you're going to focus on this summer, then you better do some, you better do some good work because if you don't, then there's going to be some problems, right? In terms of like, you just know that it's not necessarily going to work out. So that's kind of where I'm curious because you don't also usually put together a championship team in one summer. So what do they do to put all these pieces together? We know the stuff that they need, right? But like, are they going to be able to get all of that? That's where I'm a little bit skeptical, right? Like, I know that they've hired and brought him some other people, but you still have Rob Pelinka there. So, can he get that done? I don't know. I don't feel but so confident about that.
Yeah.
So that's where I don't know. But if they've been planning for this summer, then yeah, like you should have high expectations, but they need to have clarity on, like you said, a lot of other things first. And like you said, there also needs to be some dominoes left. But I'd still say it's like a solid season given the expectations.
For sure.
So now, after that, this is now where we kind of move into a lot of the first round, right? Teams, right? So, these are some of these are some of our favorite teams. Where do we start off? Let's go to the East. Let's pick the Orlando Magic.
Oh boy.
Let's go with them. Um,
God. Where do you even
yeah.
start?
Yeah. I was not. This one is tough because it's like on the one hand, I don't really want to be super nice because they got out because they lost in the first round. They fired their coach. I understand the circumstances, right? Where it's like, okay, they lost Franz Wagner. They were up 3-1. Then they blew the 3-1 lead. So it's like, I don't know. It might be a C plus, perfectly balanced as all things should be. C minus because of the fact that it's like you lost in 7. So it's like you had a respectable quote unquote first round loss except for game 7 after you lost Franz Wagner. But I also can't feel but so great about it because you were up 3-1, game 6 even without Franz Wagner. You had a 24-point lead in the second half and basically put up 1950s offensive scoring in a half, right? I think that was it was pretty much like amongst the lowest scoring halves that we've seen since the 50s, which is not a good thing. So yeah, so because you basically matched Jim Crow era hoops, I don't really feel great about that, in my opinion. And at the same time, why were you an 8th seed in the first place? Because this was a team where we expected them to be like runner-ups. Like if it wasn't Cleveland or New York, we're thinking maybe it's Orlando. And I didn't feel like that coming out of this postseason. Now maybe if Franz didn't get hurt, it would be different. But at the same time, it's like I still don't feel comfortable. I still wouldn't have felt confident about them going further. It's like, yeah, you would have won a playoff series, but I still have questions about this roster. I still have questions about can all 5 of these guys actually work together and be like one of the best teams in the league? I don't know. We didn't really get a whole lot of it this season or the postseason. It looked great the first 4 games against Detroit, but I still have questions about it. Maybe they just need to get a better bench, right? Like maybe you move on from Isaac and some of these other guys, but I don't know. It's kind of like a C minus for me, but I honestly would not have a problem with anybody giving them lower. And honestly, that's probably the best choice because it's like expectation versus reality. Like this team is one of the living definitions of that, right? Where it was like the expectations were very high and they did not meet those expectations at all, in my opinion. So I should be more nasty to them. I'm gonna assume you're gonna be more nasty to them, so go right ahead.
Oh, buddy. Do I have news for you? I'm giving this team a D plus. I
Oh,
did not like their season at all. right? And it starts with the regular season. I don't care what anybody says. Like you said, we were very high on this team, and I think everybody else was. Everybody
Yes.
expected some sort of jump from Paolo or Franz, maybe even both in a utopian society. Yeah, both of them turn into beasts. And then, you have Jalen Suggs returning back, from injury and whatnot, Anthony Black development, and the addition of Desmond Bane, the guy who you gave up a lot for,
Mm-hmm.
and you did nothing with it. You regressed in the regular season. Then in the postseason, you looked okay.
Yeah.
I picked them to win that series.
Yeah, they went up 3-1.
They went up 3-1, and you blew it. Granted, like you said, health matters, but I think in certain situations, that's still a winnable series. I don't care
Game
what
6.
anybody says.
Game 6.
It was a winnable series, but they sold the bag immensely.
Yeah.
So I can't help but just say it's a D+ because disappointing regular season. You got people's hopes up in the postseason, and then you crushed everybody's dreams again, right? So it's like, what are we doing with this team? I'm not ready to jump ship just because I'm a huge Paolo fan. Like, I still think he's one of the best young players in the league, but I'm gonna need to see some internal development, hopefully some retooling, with the new coach and whatnot. But my God, I don't really know what to say other than disappointing. D for disappointment. How about that?
Yeah. Yes. S for schizophrenic. This was probably the most schizophrenic team in the league this year.
They didn't know what they were doing.
Each day, each week, we had no idea. Because I remember playing when they lost to Boston at the end of the regular season. Then they lost to Philly in the play-in without Embiid. And we're like, what is going on with this team?
Mm-hmm.
Then they go up 3-1. Okay, we're back. Then they blow a 3-1 lead, have an awful game 6 collapse. That's the one that they should have won. And they did. So it's like, that's the problem going forward. Like you said, Paolo, I think, mostly acquitted himself fine in the series, right? Like, he had a couple of but he also had some really high moments as well.
Yeah, he's a riser.
But the problem is, okay, the rest of the roster, do we actually feel good about it going forward, right? That's the problem. And I don't know where they're going to start. Like, are they moving on from one of the core guys? Because unless you reconfigure the bench, there's not as many other things you can do, right? You also have to figure out Anthony Black, right, who had a really good regular season. Can he actually slide into the starting point guard role? But if he does, then you got to move on from Jalen Suggs. So there's still some questions about this roster, which is, to me, is not good considering the expectations were very high. Now, maybe the expectations just shouldn't have been that high, but I think it was fair to have high expectations. And clearly the Magic had high expectations for themselves because they gave up what they gave up to get Desmond Bane, who honestly had a really good season. So that was one of the bright spots, but that one was rough.
Yeah.
So, and then after that, kind of probably just breeze through some of these other teams a little bit, right? Like, so Hawks, Raptors, what did you think of those teams? Like, did you give them anything good?
I mean, honestly, like with the Raptors, I give them a B.
Yeah.
I give them a B mainly because I thought they were one of the spoiler teams going into the postseason, and they almost did. Honestly, they took Cleveland to 7 games, so that was a winnable series for them. And the group was injured. I think there's still questions to be answered. Very odd group of guys, but I don't walk away feeling bad about that team. It's not Orlando Magic bad, I can tell you that much. Like it's generally positive, and I think there's a recipe there. It's just they kind of have to fine tune the edges, and I think they'll be okay. And with the Hawks, I give them probably like a C+. They were like one of the only teams in the East that even gave New York somewhat of a challenge, and I thought New York might have been cooked in that first round.
They won the most games of any of the Knick opponents in the playoffs.
And shout out to CJ McCollum, and shout out to that roster. I think there's a foundation there, and they just have to build on it. So I'd give them a C+. Maybe that's being too harsh. You could bump it to like a B- or a B, and I wouldn't be mad at that either, just because what a turbulent ride it was for them, especially after trading their franchise guy.
Yeah, I think I give both of them Bs.
Okay.
The Raptors one, like you said, I think Barnes acquitted himself very well. in that first round loss to the Cavs. Right, he played awesome and kind of showed everybody like, hey, some of the people have kind of doubted me as like a franchise guy. I think I'm a franchise guy, right? So I would say he did that pretty well. Ingram had a really good regular season. Postseason was kind of not that great. He also got hurt. And then Emmanuel quickly was also hurt as well. So it's like he just didn't have enough offensively. They were kind of in a couple of those games, and it's like Cavs were just better down the stretch.
Sure.
So that's kind of the question of, like you said, do you feel good enough to build on this roster and just add other pieces, or like do you kind of have to like maybe ship some guys out? Like, Barrett's kind of been on the trade block for a minute. What do you do with him? He hit the big shot in Game 6, so it's like I like a lot of the players on the team. If they're fully healthy, they should still be a playoff team. I just don't know how much further they can go beyond the first round. Like after that, like they
Yeah.
don't feel like a conference finals team to me as currently constructed. But maybe if you swap some guys around, if you could bring in somebody better to play alongside and pair with Barnes, maybe that would probably be something you could start off with, because you can do a lot of different things with him because of his versatile game. And then the Hawks, it's funny enough, they were like the Magic, right? We're like going into the season, the expectations were very high, but then they basically blew up the team because then they traded Trae Young, and then they also traded Porzingis,
Yeah.
right? But it's like you found something with Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I mean, we already knew he was good, but he had an even better season from a production standpoint than we expected. Jalen Johnson, really good regular season, didn't look as good in the postseason, but it's kind of to be expected. And then, Dyson Daniels, he's there, he exists, but the Ricochet one is the rough one, right? Because that was the number one pick, and he quickly fell out of the rotation to the point where, I mean, they were playing what they were. Kuminga was not a number one pick, and he was playing. He played well in a couple of the games against the Knicks, but and then even like beyond that, right? It was like who was coming off the bench for Atlanta, right? Like Jock Lando was hurt, but like who were some of those other players that were playing? I don't even remember at this point
Yeah.
because it
Me
feels like
neither.
it was so long ago.
Yeah.
But just and that's the funny part is that like they got obliterated by the Knicks after those two wins, especially in Game 6. But it is funny how they actually gave them the most quote unquote comp in the postseason, right? Like, yeah, like Gabe Vincent was playing over Ricochet, right?
Yeah.
Like, and that's no disrespect to Gabe Vincent, but like Ricochet is the number one pick. So it's like you can't have your number one pick basically be like a DNP guy where we're just like, yeah, we can't play this guy
Yeah.
in these moments. So
You're right.
you have to figure that out. But I do like some of their core guys. I don't know if like all of them will be together long term, but I do like at least some of the groupings. Like probably bring McCollum back. Maybe he's a sixth man. And then maybe you can get a good guard in the draft because this is supposed to be a draft that has a lot of guards in there,
Mm-hmm.
and that feels like that's probably what they need, like a point guard. So hopefully they can do that and then kind of move on from there.
Yeah.
But it still doesn't feel like they'll reach the ceiling next year of like the ceiling that we thought they could reach this upcoming season. But they had a lot of change over the course of the season. So it's like when you have that much change, you expect to probably take a step back in the present. Hopefully set yourself up better for the future.
Yeah. I would agree with that.
Yeah. And then after that, who were the other first round? Boston. What do we do with them? Because this is another team that kind of overperformed in the regular season. And then in the playoffs, they blew a 3-1 lead and didn't look like the team that we thought that they would be. So what do we do with them? This doesn't feel excuse
Bless
me,
you.
like a high grade. Thank you. This doesn't feel like a high grade team to me.
No.
But what do you think?
I
Because
mean, it's tough because like here's the thing. Regular season, I loved it. I loved every minute
right.
of it. Postseason, I hated every minute. Right. So I guess the middle.
They were up 3-1 though.
I know the middle ground. I guess is a C.
Yeah.
Maybe a C for Celtics. I don't know, but
Mm-hmm.
for me, it's like I love Tatum coming back. I like that. I guess you didn't really reap a whole lot of rewards from it. But at least you also got to see an interesting version of Jaylen Brown, and maybe that's to their benefit, right? Considering all the rumors that we've been hearing about Jaylen Brown potentially getting moved, and I ultimately think he will be moved. There's no way he doesn't, especially after
Yeah.
the way he's kind of been talking on the internet and whatnot.
Mhm.
And, I think his trade value is at an all-time high, so maybe that's a plus. But even then, I feel like if Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are sharing the floor, there's just that expectation because these guys are title winners, right? And Jaylen Brown is a finals MVP that you're going to get out of the first round. And I think, obviously the injuries didn't help in that series, but still a very winnable series. And I think Jaylen Brown didn't, I don't think that was his best series, like at all,
No.
remotely.
Yeah. But
Um,
it was his most favorite. But it was his favorite season.
Well, I would understand why. It's practically your team. You're not really sharing the spotlight with a whole lot of people, right? And there's a lot of talk of, oh, Jaylen Brown is the guy because, they're able to win all these games without JT. But at the end of the day, I think it still kind of showed you there is no winning Jaylen Brown without a solid version of JT.
Right.
In terms of, postseason, like the stuff that really matters, like regular season, whoop de doo, great. Like, congratulations. You still lost to Philly, who you weren't supposed to lose to.
Yeah. They were
So
not supposed to lose.
I'm kind of like in the middle on them. Like I said, I like the regular season, hated every minute of the off season or the postseason for them. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'd probably go C.
Yeah. That's where I was at.
Yeah.
C minus. The funny thing is, if they were, if it was flipped and like they were 7 and Philly was 2, right? Then it's like this is kind of what we would have expected going into the season, anyways.
Mm-hmm.
But the expectations change once we see what happens in the regular season. So
Sure.
then the expectation was they kind of jumped ahead as the favorites in the Eastern Conference, and then they went out in the first round, like you said, to Philly, who they weren't expected to lose to. And Embiid obviously shakes it up because he comes in late, but it's like you're still up 3-1.
Yeah.
You just needed to win one more game, and they lost a game in which he didn't play, so that doesn't help either.
There you go.
So yeah, that so and the main thing is coming out of the series. Obviously, they need to change something. Like they're not going to be able to go into next season with the same roster and expect to go that much further. Like it just, I don't think they have enough pieces on the margins to be able to do that. Now, do they have to trade Jaylen Brown to do it? Like I don't think they have to do it. It's just the problem is now you've ran out of like, oh, we can trade the guys like Marcus Smart and Robert Williams and Malcolm Brogdon for like Porzingis and Drew Holiday. You can't really do that now with the other contracts that they have. So you almost have to kind of now move into like, well, shoot, now we might have to move like one, like a Derek White or like a Jaylen Brown or whatever. So that's where I'm kind of curious as to where the offseason goes. But as for the season as a whole, it's tough because it's like the expectations went from being low to high, and then the postseason happened, and it kind of just shows the gap between the postseason and the regular season. But
For
like,
sure.
you know, it's like I didn't come out of that series feeling amazing about Boston. Like this is kind of why like they're rumored to potentially be after Giannis, right?
I would agree.
It may not have happened if they had been able to win the East, or maybe it still happens anyways. But like, it doesn't feel like it wouldn't have felt like you would have needed to make changes as urgently.
Yeah.
So that's the issue. Then now we move over to the Western Conference, kind of move through some of these other first round teams as well. Um, Phoenix and Portland, what's the grade there? I mean, like Phoenix got swept, Portland lost in 5. I didn't really know what to make of Phoenix a little bit just because it's like they were injured in the playoffs. The regular season was good.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, B?
Yeah, that's what I
Yeah,
had.
I would say
They
B.
outperformed my expectations.
Yeah,
Point blank.
so I would
Period.
say
That's all
B.
that needs to be said about them.
Yeah. And then for the Blazers, B?
I don't want to say
I
that.
don't think I don't think the expectations were like super high for Portland going into the
No.
season. Like I don't think they were projected to be a playoff team either, and then they got into the playoffs. Um, so that's the thing. Like those are teams where it's like I don't feel as bad about what happened in the postseason because I didn't expect much from them in the postseason anyways. Whereas like, at least you kind of if you're Portland, you found something to build off on to build on in terms of a core. You just need to add some other guys, right? Like that's why they're after maybe like a Giannis or going after a Jaylen Brown or somebody like that. And then for Phoenix, they don't have as much flexibility to do as much because they don't have the picks. But could you at least look at things as like, okay, we kind of got a reset. We had a good regular season. Is there any way that maybe we could build around Booker and have a roster that's like good, like that's better than what they have? I don't know. The West was a little bit worse than I think was expected. So there's a couple of teams where it's like I could see if they're healthy, they could leapfrog a team like Phoenix if they just ran it back. But at the same time, like they still outperformed our expectations. So it's like I would give them B's.
Yeah, I loved
Not much.
Phoenix's season, so
Yeah,
I give him a B. And
yeah,
then
yeah,
with the Blazers, I give him like a C plus, honestly.
yeah. Main question for Phoenix is like I guess like bring back Mark Williams, yes or no?
Yeah.
And then for yeah, because I don't know what they're gonna do. And then for Portland, do you go after Giannis or do you just kind of allow some of these young guys to continue to get better? What are you gonna do with like Jeremy Grant, Drew Holiday, some Robert Williams? Do you bring him back? That's kind of the question there.
Yeah,
But
they got some questions, and I think we'll
yeah,
find those answers out pretty
yeah.
soon.
But if those teams ran it back, then it's like they would probably be not any better than last year.
Agreed.
I think is the issue. Then after that, the other playoff teams, right, that I think had bigger expectations were Denver and Houston, right? So we'll start with Denver. Um, do I want to give them an F? Do I want to give them an F? I
You
really
could.
feel like I could, but it feels like it would almost be unfair because it's like I haven't given anybody an F yet. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah, I
It's like
understand.
and it would feel like I'm really biased because like that was my championship pick. So it's like I'm just punishing my championship pick with an F. But it's like, oh man, it's like this is like the thing that sucks about like the playoffs. Is like the like once you have the playoffs, then it changes. Like I think
Everything.
I got to give them a D,
Yeah, I
like a
have
D
that too.
minus. Yeah, I think I have to give them a D because it's like they were expected to be in the hunt for a championship, and they probably had, I would say, the worst first round loss of any of these teams. Like with some of the, at least like because I know where you're probably going to lean, but at least with some of those other teams, they could say like we didn't have some of our like best guys or whatever. You had Jokic, you had Jamal Murray, and Minnesota had Terrence Shannon Jr. and you found a way to lose that game.
Seriously
You know
though.
what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that cannot happen.
Yeah.
That cannot happen. I know they didn't have Aaron Gordon. I know during the regular season they had a ton of injuries, but like, come on, like that can't happen. It's just like that.
I
That to me
agree.
was pretty bad. So it's like I can't give them anything higher than a D. I should give them an F, but I haven't given anyone else an F, but like they would be the closest that I
Yeah.
would be to giving a team an F. Just given what the expectations were, there was an extended stretch early in the season where they were good. Then there was an extended stretch where they were just very mediocre. Then they basically were like, "Hey, we won 12 straight games at the end of the regular season." Maybe that mean no, it didn't mean anything. It didn't mean
Yeah.
anything at all. So that's the problem. You traded for Cam Johnson. He was fine, I guess, but he's not better than Michael Porter Jr., which is what we said when the trade was made, right? Which was not what most people thought. And then you paid Christian Brown. That doesn't look great. Can you pay Peyton Watson and Christian Brown and Cam Johnson? Probably not. That's why they're looking to trade one of those guys. I think they could trade Cam Johnson, but I would probably prefer to trade Christian Brown. But I
Agreed.
don't know if they're going to be able to trade
He
him.
has no
So you may
value.
have to right. So that's the problem is like you have to find a way to keep Peyton Watson. And like he didn't play in the playoffs. It would have been cool to see him. But again, you shouldn't have needed him to beat Terrence Shannon Jr. Especially like given the fact that like they literally called you out and then you still lost. Like that was the problem. Like that's the part that's bad. And even like with Jokic, he did not have a great series. He kind of lost his mind like at the end of the series. So it's like that's another team where it's like I can't feel the same way about and like maybe it's an overreaction, but it's like I can't feel the same way about them moving forward as I would have before. Where it's like I would have to see them do something tangibly good to make me feel better about them going into next season.
Yeah, I have them with a D as well. Not good, not good at all.
Yeah.
I mean, basically for the same reasons as you. From top to bottom, it was just not a good postseason. I think the
Not
regular season was okay. Right? You got the number 3 seed. I think it probably would have been better if they'd gotten the
mhm.
2 seed. But you can't control some of that stuff, and yeah, it was just a bad matchup. And
Yeah.
then to lose to a battered Wolves
Yeah.
team, like when all these
Can't happen.
guys went down, it's like, all right, well now we can win, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
No.
that didn't happen. No, that the complete opposite happened. Actually, really, like
Yeah.
that's the scariest part.
Yes.
So something needs to change going forward. And their hand is being forced into it, unfortunately. Um,
Yeah.
and I'm curious what they do, but I think their outlook on things is probably going to have to be the draft. Unfortunately, they're going to have to probably look at that 4 spot, 3 spot.
Hmm.
Maybe go for a guy like Koa Pete, or figure out
Yeah.
what's going on with Holmes, and then bank on Watson, being better than whoever you have to get rid of, and then hopefully Jamal Murray and Jokic have a bounce back season. But my God, for the top duo in the NBA, they look like garbage in this freaking series, bro. Like that was a hard watch, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the rough part because, like, those guys were playing like the best basketball of their careers for, Murray for the entire regular season, Jokic for up until he got hurt,
Pretty much.
right? Like, that's the part that sucks. And then, like, you went into the playoffs and it's like, at least for Jokic, that was probably his worst playoff series that I've seen in a minute,
Yeah,
right? Since he's been like a star, big time level player.
sure.
And then for Murray, he wasn't necessarily that great either, other than the first couple of games,
Mm-hmm.
right? So like that's the part that kind of sucks is like you're like not only did you have injuries and whatnot, but like your best players didn't necessarily acquit themselves all that well either. Like that, so that kind of sucks, right? Like and it's like that shouldn't happen against, like I said, a bruised and battered Wolves team. I think they lost the game where DiVincenzo and Anthony Edwards got hurt in the same game. That was the 40-point IO game.
Yeah.
So that's not good. Like, it's cool that we got a rivalry, but it's like if you're Denver, you needed to take care of business there. You should not have
Yep.
gone down 3-1. That's the part that really sucks. So if you're Denver, so not good. And then Houston, I'll give them a D plus, as in Denver plus. They did better than Denver, so I'll give them that. No, I mean they lost in 6, but they have the excuse of no Durant. They also have the excuse of no Van Vliet. But the reason why I can't give them like a C plus, because I think there are some people that will be nicer than me, is because this team was expected to be another championship contender. They looked like it early in the season, even without Fred Van Vliet. They did not look like it maybe, I don't know what, like after 2 months in, something like that. So that's the problem, is that like Durant was really good, then he got hurt. Adams was pretty good, then he got hurt. So then it was kind of left up to the young guys. Eh, they didn't necessarily acquit themselves all that well in the series. Thompson was fine. Şengün wasn't great. Jabari Smith Jr. wasn't great. Reed Shepard wasn't great. So it's like you have a lot of questions probably about Houston. If I'm them, my guess is that they probably run it back and they probably say, we had some injuries, so let's run it back. Let's reconfigure the bench, because that's kind of the other sneaky thing, like Dorian Finney-Smith. No, that did not work this year. No, right? Pelinka let him walk, and it looks like that he had a reason for letting him walk, right? And that was why, because he was just not healthy this year. So that's my guess, is they probably run it back, hope for Fred VanVleet to get healthy. The question is, like, if they're fully healthy with this group, with these young guys, do we feel confident that they can challenge these other top teams? It doesn't feel like it. But, we didn't get to see it in the postseason, so that kind of sucks. I wish we had gotten them, like, with at least, like, I wish VanVleet hadn't gotten hurt. But it's like, at the same time, other teams had injuries as well. So it's like, it's a disappointment, especially considering, like I said, I looked back and they were favored to win this Lakers series, even like after Durant got hurt. So like, and then you lose, and then like, what was it? It was game 3. That was the one where they lost in overtime, right? Where it was like the Jabari Smith, the dumb pass, and then like the dumb Reed Shepard turnover. Yeah, that was bad. So at least they didn't get swept. So that's my point. That's why I give them D plus Denver plus, because they went 6 games just like Denver. And they didn't have their best player, but it's still bad. And I still feel like if they're fully healthy, they're still good, but I don't necessarily feel I don't think they can beat OKC or San Antonio in a 7-game series next season if they're fully healthy. But what did we learn about this team? This was your team to pick the championship, so I will let you tell us, what did we learn about this team and what was your grade for them?
I learned that they're the first F of the day. No, I'm serious. Like I don't
I
even
knew it was
really know what to say, because the regular season was far from, sunshine and rainbows. Like,
Right.
it was not a good regular season. And I don't care what
Yeah.
anybody says. That number 5 next to their team name is a facade, right? Like they dealt with injury after injury, right? You dealt with lack of an offense, lack of a
Yeah.
defense at times.
Yeah.
Then your main guy is exposed for having burners. That doesn't help. So now you have locker room drama. You add that into play, and Udoka seems like he just lost control of how to coach. Like I don't get it. And then, you fast forward to the postseason, same issues, right? Oh, this is another thing that is contributing to the F. We already knew about Van Vliet before the season even technically started, right? So what would a logical thinking human GM do? You address the point guard situation. Reed was not ready. Thompson is not a point guard. So what do you have to do? Aaron Holiday is not the guy. You have to go out and make a move. You have assets to give up. Something. You have something to give up. And they didn't address any of that
No.
at the deadline. And that's what stumped me. I'm like, there's so many options out there to at least do something. So that way you can say you tried. But they didn't try. So that's another thing that's contributing to the F. Fast forward to the postseason. Cool. KD gets hurt. All right. Then you're like, all right, well, they still got Thompson, right? They still got Şengün, right? Like, and
this is the most ideal team that you would have wanted to match up
exactly
against.
because they don't have Luka, they don't have AR. It's just Braun and whoever else, right? You're like, oh my God, we have like 2 all-star level talent guys on our team that are gonna pop off. Jabari Smith is no, didn't happen. And that's what I learned about that team. They're way further away from contention than I ever thought. Şengün, not even close to the number 1 option. I understand the potential frustration that KD has about that team going forward because he just proved that he's not a number 1. That's unironically number 1. Number 2, Thompson, he's got to learn how to make a jump shot, right? Or at least get comfortable knocking those down. I don't know if that's ever going to happen. Jabari Smith, same thing. It's just like the youth is gross, and it reminded me of the AAU Rocket version, right? Like a far cry from the team that we saw last year, right? Too much of just doing whatever, man. And you lost the defensive identity too, and the lack of depth due to the injuries didn't help. But my God, I mean, the season just blew up in their faces as soon as the ball was tipped off for this series. I feel like it was just blow after blow. There were times where you're like, oh, okay, they won what, like 2 games, and you're like, all right, maybe. No. And the youth showed a lot, and they just have leaps and bounds to go forward. And I guess KD, I guess he stays on this team, but even then, it's like now I feel like you're just stuck with, all right, we've got to just follow that slow rebuild phase of like, all right, is Şengün our guy? Is Thompson our guy? Like, you kind of just have to wait for these guys to pan out because now I don't really think you can move anybody anywhere just because their value is probably at an all-time low, including KD's as well. So F for that.
If you're not getting like a Jaylen Brown, Giannis type guy, then you almost kind of have to just be like, wait until Van Vliet gets back or get some other point guard. And that's the thing, like, because you did point out that like even after Fred Van Vliet went down, like there were still a lot of people who still expected Houston to be like a title contender type of team, whether or not it was like belief in Reed Shepherd or just other pieces of the roster. I kind of felt like once he went down that I was like, okay, I don't think they can win the title, but like I think it was fair for most people to say like he wasn't one of their 3 best players. So it's like, should it take them automatically from like, they, if he's not there, all of a sudden they don't really even look that great. Like they don't look like they can really function late in games. Like, yeah, that's part of it, but it still feels like you kind of leave this wishing that some of the young guys were a little bit better, right? Like, obviously, like with the Spurs, you have Wemby, but even like without him, like you still feel pretty good about Castle and Harper, but you don't necessarily feel that way about some of Houston's younger players. And that's kind of like where you kind of have to figure some stuff out. Again, they're still young, so maybe you hope that they get better. But yeah, like if you forecasted at the beginning of the season that like, yeah, they're just going out in the first round to another team that wasn't 100%, like that wouldn't feel good. Like based off of what people thought, if you kind of said to a Rockets fan, you're going to finish the same as the Lakers. Well, no, you're gonna do worse than what the Lakers ended up doing. You wouldn't have felt like that because like going into the season, most people felt like Houston was like a top four team in the Western Conference, right? Like you just probably swap out San Antonio for Houston,
Yeah.
right? It was like OKC, Denver, Houston, and then maybe like Minnesota was four, but even then, like most people were like OKC, Denver, and then maybe Houston's like the best of the second tier or third tier. So like, and that wasn't the case. So I do wonder what they do. Like I said, I think they probably run it back and reconfigure the bench. Maybe that's what they shouldn't do. I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do, but it feels like that might be the most likely because I don't really see them drastically changing the roster. Now, maybe they might go after because, like, some people have mentioned, like, maybe they get Jalen Brown or maybe they get, the Giannis thing kind of died earlier in the year, I guess, because how the regular season went for a while. But I don't know. Like, they may just kind of be in that tier of like good, but maybe not quite good enough to be at the top of the West without some fortune going their way. I'm not sure, but that's where it feels like they are right now, where
Yeah.
it's like they're probably not quite as high in terms of the tiers what we had them going into the season.
Yeah, I'd agree.
So those are all the playoff teams. I don't think we need to spend like a ton of time on the teams that
We
didn't make the
we
playoffs.
could do
But
that. We could do that for the draft when we start talking
yeah,
about the draft and go in
exactly.
depth on the then.
Right. So yeah, so it's like I don't think we have to spend a ton of time on the playoff team on the non-playoff teams. I mean, we could mention the play-in teams because it's like those were kind of the playoffs in a way, sort of, I guess. Or the lower play-in teams, right? Like Charlotte, Miami. Charlotte, I feel cool about. Miami, if they don't get Giannis, I don't feel that great about. I mean, unless they get Giannis.
D's all around.
You gave Charlotte a D?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, they didn't
Really?
they
Why?
didn't they didn't accomplish anything. The play-in is not that's like the equivalent of a wild card and you lost. It's not like they won. Like it's a D for me for both.
I gave him a B.
A B?
I did.
I
I
mean I
did.
mean like okay, cool. Like we saw some fun tidbits. Like they had a great stretch, but like it didn't really amount to anything. They didn't even get into the playoffs.
Yeah, I gave him a B just because I liked a lot of what I saw at different points from different players. Obviously, like Knipple had a really good rookie year.
Yeah.
Lamelo Ball, I guess, was healthy. Brandon Miller was healthy. But the main thing is you still have questions about the center spot, and then what are you going to do with Bridges, right? Like, because it sounds like they might go after Sabonis, but but that question has to be answered right now, and we still don't know. And then for Miami, it's like they had a really good start to the regular season, but then they had a really bad finish to the regular season, and then they lost in the play-in. Maybe they could have won, had Bam not gotten hurt. Bam scored 83, so that was cool. But I don't really feel any different about Miami than I did like a year ago, other than like, can they do something to make their team better? And if not, then they're probably still going to be about where they are right now because I don't think like the core that they have is good enough to really be a major player in the East as currently constructed.
Yeah.
Then in the Western, yeah. So I'd probably give Miami like yeah. I think they're a D probably to me, and
Yeah.
then I would have Charlotte at a B. Then in the West, Clippers Warriors. What would you give them?
Warriors D. Clippers C.
Yeah, the Clippers one is funny because I think it gets saved by trading Zubac and Harden.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the transactions that they made where it's like you got Darius Garland for James Harden
Mm-hmm.
and you were able to get that pick from Indiana.
Yep.
Right? So like if they don't get the pick, then you probably bump it down like half a letter grade or a full letter grade. But by getting the pick, you sold high on Zubac and then you were able to get a top 5 pick and then you got Garland. So like the transactions like you said, probably bump it up to a C. But the regular season, the expectations were that they were going to be, a good team. Do you remember the over under for the Clippers going into the season?
I don't off the top of my
It
head.
was 50 games.
Are you serious?
Yeah, it was at 50
Wow.
games.
Well, that's dark.
Yeah,
But I just
so
like the fact that they got younger, honestly.
right. And that's the thing, like the transactions are what help boost it.
Yeah.
And then obviously, I guess Kawhi being healthy, can you sell high on him? Then the Warriors, yeah, that's a tough one because it's like they weren't healthy the second half of the season, but even when they were kind of at full strength, there was only like one stretch, like right before Butler got hurt, where they looked consistently pretty good. So it's like they were kind of just disappointing to me all around. So it's like I give them a D. They got Porzingis. I do kind of wonder what they do in the summer, but it's like but it's like also like with all the injuries and the other like Kaminga locker room stuff, it's like you could probably like just throw this season in the garbage and just be like, we don't know what this was, but this isn't us. But yeah, I don't know. The problem for them now is like I don't their regular season floor is kind of low. So they would need a lot to go their way for them to have a good regular season and then to get into the playoffs. Um but I would like to see what this group looks like going into next season. Like when it's like, okay, you have a healthy Steph, maybe Jimmy comes back, Porzingis is there. What else do you have? He should be better, but I still don't necessarily like feel like that they can reach the top anymore, which is kind of like expected at this point. But yeah, like not a whole lot to say about that. So I mean, at least did any of their and like the young guys, I don't think necessarily acquitted themselves all that great. The vets played very well, but they just couldn't stay healthy,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's like it's probably just too much to ask out of them. But you have to have a lot out of them just because of the situation they're in.
For
So
sure, I agree.
yeah. So after that, so that's pretty much covers the teams in terms of the offseason reviews. I guess just last couple of things to close it out. What did you think? You're the Wizards guy. What were your thoughts about what was being reported about Peterson only working out with the Wizards, and then like it's still seemingly some questions about what the Wizards might do?
Well, I initially when I heard the Peterson thing come about, I immediately was like, okay, that has really nothing to do with Washington. It's more so of a statement from Peterson, like, yeah, I think I should be going number one. Like, I don't see myself as number two. Why would I go
Okay.
visit, with other teams when I know that I'm a top one guy, right? And the argument is there. I think there's a very valid point and a very high chance that the Wizards take Darryn Peterson in this draft number one. But then you add in the Trae Young factor that you just reported on. And then also the other factor of, yeah, if Miami doesn't get Giannis this offseason, then they would pivot immediately to Trae Young. That's like, whoa. Okay, maybe there is some truth to, the Wizards not really being totally set on AJ and, maybe leaning toward Peterson. So I don't really know what to make of it. Like I said, I don't think that this is a draft where you can risk passing up on a guy like AJ. I think Darren has a lot of upside, maybe even more upside than AJ DeBonsa. But I feel like DeBonsa's ready out the gate. He can score, 3 dribbles or less on pretty much 1 through 5. And it's the way he scores, right? It's not like he could just rim run every time, but there's a certain fluidity to his game that I really just enjoy. And I think he's the most NBA ready, but also has an insanely high ceiling out of, all the top 3 guys. But we'll kind of have to wait and see for the draft to kind of see what happens. But
Yeah.
it's a weird smokescreen because, like I said, I just thought initially it was a ploy for
Hmm.
Peterson to just make his mark and make a statement like, "Yeah, I'm number one." That's about it. Because
Right.
it's not like just because you don't meet with any other team doesn't mean you're not going to get selected. Like I don't think Ace Bailey, excuse me, I don't think Ace
Mhm.
Bailey met with Utah when he was selected, or even Paolo. I don't think Paolo met with the Magic when he was selected. So it's all
Right.
dependent, on the organization, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the question. Like, and like it seems like yeah, some of these teams aren't sure. Like even for Utah, right? Like we saw like reporting about like that the Jazz are torn between a lot of these guys, and some people think that like oh maybe Boozer goes second overall, right? So it's like
Possibility.
it seems like there's still a lot of fluidity going on with the draft, right? And it's probably just because they just people may just not feel that there's like a huge gap between all, or at least the GMs may not feel that there's a big of enough gap between any of these guys that like we have to pick this guy at this pick. So like each team may have a favorite, but if like one's not there, then it could change. So that's where I do wonder, like, of those guys, which is the guy that's most likely to potentially drop and go lower than expected. What do but what do you think about that?
Yeah, I don't know. The top three guys, it's there's a clear, I guess, battle between Peterson and AJ. But then,
Mhm.
like, Boozer is like the one where I think people have the most questions about. But I think he does fit on Utah for sure, and especially if they want to trade a guy like Markkinen, because I have been
Right.
hearing the weird stuff about Peterson, and what's his name, Keontae George having the
Yeah,
same
Kelsey Ford.
agent, and then that
Right.
potentially messing up money for certain people. And, like, would Keontae George even get that, $100 million
Yeah.
extension, right? If the
And that he's
ball,
questioning whether or not they can play together, I think.
yeah, and that's interesting too, because I feel like Peterson is more of a one. Um, I know he's listed as a two, but I think he wants to play the one, and I think he's probably better with the ball in his hands, and that's why I'm kind of like, what's going on in Washington too. So I I
Mhm.
I don't know what's gonna happen with this draft, and I'm very
Well,
excited that my team, kind of holds all the cards here and can decide the fate of this entire draft. But at the same time,
yeah.
it's making me a nervous wreck because I feel like they could also brutally mess this one up.
Right. Yeah, because if they just take AJ number one, then that settles it for
Yeah.
Washington, and then it kind of falls on these other teams to figure stuff out. So there could still be chaos, but then if they don't take him number one and they take someone else, then depending on who it is, then like you said, that could set off a bunch of other stuff.
Oh
So
yeah.
then obviously with Utah, there's some stuff about Kessler as well, where it's like they only want to pay him but so much, which kind of feels like is going to be reoccurring now with the
Oh yeah.
CBA. And then he wants more than that. Can he get that from other teams? I don't know. I mean, we've liked Walker Kessler, but he's obviously a name that's, you're going to have to watch out for in free agency. And they still think that, like, he might just go back and re-sign, right? Because, we know how restricted free agency works, right? But it is a name to look out for. But so far, we haven't really had a restricted free agent leave their team in a while. Usually they go back. I mean, even like with Kaminga and Cam Thomas, like they went back, just the contracts were very different because Cam Thomas took the qualifying offer and now he's not on a team right now. And then Kaminga did like the 2 year team option or whatever it was. And now Atlanta has to figure out what to do with him. He's not the Warriors' problem anymore. So it's going to be fun. And obviously, we'll try to have some content about the draft, as this goes, because this should be fun. I'm pretty excited about this one because it feels like there's a lot of good players. I hope, and maybe some fun action that goes on in
Oh
terms
yeah.
of all these.
Yeah.
So that pretty much ends it for off ball takes. I don't think we had any comments to address, yeah, from any of our last content. So yeah, that would pretty much conclude today's episode of the Off Ball Takes podcast. Of course, continue to like and subscribe. We appreciate all the support. Also, of course, shout out to everybody who showed up in our live stream as well. And you can go back and look at it for more thoughts on the Knicks Spurs finals, right? And all the fallout from that. So we appreciate all the support. We'll see you next episode.